All right, let's talk about another really nice flooring option that also means really expensive tile. Um, People like tile for certain parts of the house. Entryway, you can do some fancy tile work. It's nice for bathrooms, kitchens, laundry rooms. It's very resistant to water, depending on how it's installed and depending on how you sealed it. It's also a very easy to clean surface. It's pretty durable. Um, Unfortunately, pretty brittle. But anyway, this can be really expensive. I have $10 to $20 per square foot. Again, that's pretty broad range, and it depends a lot on what kind of material you're getting, if you're doing the installation or if you're hiring someone to do it. You can buy tile for $1 a square foot. Not sure you want to, but you can. Okay, it's out there. You can buy tile that's $100 a square foot. Okay, I'm not sure you want to, but it's out there as well. Okay, we've got different options in the tile family. We've got ceramic tile, we've got porcelain tile, or there's natural stone. Okay, ceramic tile is like pottery. Okay, it's glazed tile. Porcelain tile, for the most part, is impermeable. Okay, natural stone could be marble, terrazzo, flagstone, stuff like that. That a stone that's been quarried and cut into tile. Okay, most of these tiles are going to come in a box and come in like individual tiles if they're larger. But these smaller, like little mosaic tiles, those usually come in a sheet. Okay, they're on like a mesh or a paperback or something like that, and you set that into the thin set, into the mortar, and you kind of maneuver those around. Okay, it's this one probably though. This looks like it's from a really old house. This probably was a bunch of individual tiles set in place. Okay, but nowadays, if you're buying smaller tiles, they're usually on a sheet. Okay, so tile is going to be applied to some kind of substrate with mortar. Okay, typically that mortar is going to be thin set, and it's a special kind of mortar that goes on really thin. Okay, it can go on as thin as like an eighth of an inch, or it could be built up to as thick as maybe a half of an inch. Okay, when I talk about an appropriate substrate, typically that is cement board. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to apply thin set over your subfloor, set the cement board in the thin set, nail the living daylights out of it with a roofing gun. Then you'll put more thin set down to that cement board and then embed your tile in that thin set. Okay, that's one route. Okay, there's another, I would say, school of thought that is developed, and that is applying it over a substrate that is able to move around a little bit. Okay, because that first method I talked about with the cement board and the thin set and then the more thin set and then the tile, that's very rigid. Okay, and what can happen, what can kind of be the Achilles heel of tile, is it's so hard, it's so rigid that it breaks real easily. Okay, and if there's an earthquake or something like that, you could have tiles breaking or grout lines cracking and stuff like that. So the alternative that's kind of developed recently is this mat. It's called a decoupling membrane. Excuse me, a decoupling membrane, and it's essentially kind of like a honeycomb structure. And you put that down over your subfloor, and then you put thin set on that decoupling membrane and put your tile on that. And so what can happen is it can move independently of the subfloor. Okay, so things can shake around, things can move around, and there's a little bit of give. Okay, and that has been very good for tile, I would say. Okay, we don't really want it to be that rigid. Okay, but I got a little ahead here. So depending on which path you're going to take to apply the tile, after the tile is set, you're going to come back and you're going to fill the joints between the tile with grout. Okay. Grout is another cementitious product, just like thinset. They're both Portland cement based. It's just different ratios of Portland cement and then different additives. So the nice thing about grout is you can color it. There's a lot that you can do with it. You can get different qualities of grout. I would suggest spending money on grout. Okay, excuse me. It's worth the money, but typically the grout is a permeable surface. Okay, and so if it's going to be, well, if you want it to be stain resistant and if you want it to be water resistant, you need to seal it with something. Okay, so there's kind of three components, more than that. But you've got your substrate. Is it going to be rigid? Is it going to be nailed and mortared together? Or are you going to use one of these decoupling membranes where it can kind of bounce around a little bit? Okay, apply your tile to that. Fill the joints in between your tiles with grout. Okay, and you can have, if you don't want to see grout lines, you can make your tiles tight, but you still are going to put something in there. You're going to put grout in there. It'll just be a very small amount of grout. Okay, and then you're going to seal everything. Okay, if you're using ceramic tiles, you're going to want to seal those tiles. If you're using porcelain, you don't really need to worry about it, but you're going to want to still seal the grout joints. Okay, depending on what kind of natural stone you have, you're certainly going to want to seal that up as well. Okay, marble, granite, those things are going to stain really easily if they're not sealed. Okay, and then the nice thing about tile is there's so many different kinds of tile. You can do whatever you want with this stuff too. Okay, I have a feeling that all of these tiles used to be squares. Okay, these yellow ones, these purple ones, they were all squares that got cut up and turned into a little mosaic. Okay, and it's pretty awesome looking. Okay, so you can customize it. You can do whatever you want. There's a lot that you can do with tile. Oops, sorry. So it can be really nice. It can be terrible looking too, depending on your skill level and your attention to detail. But if you do a good job and you take your time and you have a plan, it can come out really nice. And if you pick something that isn't just like trendy and hot right now, and try and pick something timeless, then you might never have to do anything ever again. You know, as long as you keep up on the ceiling and stuff like that, these tile jobs can last a really long time. It's very durable. The tile itself isn't going to be affected by water, but if you don't keep up on your ceiling, water can get in between the grout joints and damage the surface underneath it. But, generally, the sun's not really going to affect it. It's pretty tough stuff. Resistant to heat, so you could, not every kind of tile. There are some tiles that if you put something like a boiling pot of water on it, it would shatter it. But for the most part, they're pretty resistant to heat, water, pretty versatile. You could tile the wall, the floor, you could tile inside, you could tile outside, you could tile the ceiling if you're careful and you mix up your mud correctly. But, there's just a lot you can do with it. It is really expensive. It's really time consuming. It's one of those things that people think is really easy because like they, have an uncle that did it one time or whatever, but it's hard to do at first. I wouldn't say it's the most difficult trade there is, but there's certainly a learning curve and there's a million ways to do it wrong. And if you've never done it before, you're probably going to do most of them before you figure it out. So it's worth kind of figuring out how to do it right and kind of investing some time in it. It's something that you need to maintain, and that's I think where it has lost appeal. Okay, it used to be pretty common that um, in your high traffic areas you had wood floors, in your kitchens and bathrooms you tiled. Okay, but people kind of moved away from that a little bit, partly because of cost, but also partly because people don't want to clean grout joints anymore. People don't want to reseal stuff. The tile might last forever, but the grout, every 30 or 40 years, you'll have to take the grout out, just dig the grout out and re-grout everything. So it is something that you have to maintain. It can be very cold. They do have some nice, like, heated mats that you can put underneath tile now. That would be fantastic for like bathrooms or something like that. You could turn it on, the floor would be warm, but generally it's pretty cold. It's really brittle. If you drop a bowling ball on the tile, you're probably going to break a lot of tiles. And then hopefully you saved some tiles from your install job. Okay, that's the tip, everybody. Save like 4 or 5 tiles, put them in the garage for when something breaks, you can take it out and repair it, because whatever tile you bought at Pearson's last month isn't going to be there in 5 years. Okay, it's probably not going to exist anymore. So you probably want to keep a secret stash somewhere. It can be uncomfortable walking around on it. It's hard. If you slip on it and fall, it's going to hurt. And then the grout lines can be kind of a drag to clean. Okay. This is a really good tile installation video that I encourage everybody to watch. I've got that in the videos page. And then here's a video about grouting. Okay. Grouting is definitely an art form, and it's something that can turn into a total nightmare if done wrong. And so my first grouting job, I didn't take it seriously, and I just kind of, oh yeah, gave it the old whatever, it looks pretty good, and then came back the next day, and I hadn't cleaned all the grout off the tile properly, and I had used a ceramic tile, and the ceramic tile absorbed all of that grout since I didn't clean it off properly, and it just had this haze over it. And it was just so disappointing, because you spend a bunch of money on it and you spend a bunch of time on it, and then all it takes is like a little bit of carelessness and laziness, and a little bit of like not really knowing what I was doing, and it turned into like a really bad job, and it was pretty disappointing. So but then when you figure it out and you have someone tell you how it's done, and you watch some videos and you get an idea, it becomes pretty easy to do. Okay. All right. So what I would like everybody to think about, kind of take away from this, is think about where in the house different kinds of flooring should go. Okay. And that part of that is your opinion. Okay. But I would say there are reasons that certain kinds of flooring go in certain parts of the house. Okay. How much money you want to spend is going to be a big determining factor about what type of flooring you're going to put in your house. And then also the schedule. Like I said, when we were talking about refinishing floors and stuff like that, do you want to leave your house for a week to have all the floors refinished? That's not really a possibility for a lot of people. Sometimes people can't have their house torn up for that long putting in floors. Okay. So I hope this has been beneficial. I hope you've all enjoyed this, and please email me with any questions you might have, and have a great week. Thank you.